I don't usually give the Democratic Party credit for much because, let's face it, they rarely deserve credit because when they actually do the right thing, it's usually because we made them do it and they were, dragged by us kicking and screaming. However, in this instance, full stop, they get credit where it's due because Democrats in both the House and the Senate are not just taking a stand on an issue that's really important, but they are being incredibly bold and they're coming out swinging. So, what are they doing? Well, they are introducing legislation called the Save the Internet Act, and even though it's just 3 pages long, it does exactly what it needs to do and would accomplish what we all want. It would undo the FCC's 2017 repeal of net neutrality. And yes, this is actually a real net neutrality bill. It's not a shell bill like other industry shills like Marsha Blackburn were trying to push. This is a real net neutrality bill. Now, as Jake Johnson of Common Dreams reports, House and Senate Democrats on Wednesday introduced legislation that would fully restore net neutrality protections in a bid to rescue the open internet from corporate throttling, discrimination, and censorship. The Save the Internet Act is one of the few pieces of congressional legislation that actually does what it says in the title, Evan Greer, deputy director of the advocacy group Fight for the Future, said in a statement. The internet is going to come down like a political hammer on any lawmaker who fails to co-sponsor it. If passed, the Save the Internet Act would fully overturn the Republican-controlled Federal Communications Commission's unpopular net neutrality repeal, which went into effect last year. This latest legislative effort to reinstate strong net neutrality rules comes after the House last year failed to pass a resolution to overturn the FCC's repeal. The Senate passed the same resolution with the support of 3 Republicans. Now, the great news is that this already reportedly has 44 co-sponsors in the Senate, and the main sponsor of this bill, Ed Markey, who sponsored the last resolution, the CRA resolution actually, to undo the FCC's repeal, he actually believes that this is going to pass and arrive at Donald Trump's desk ultimately. And he states in a tweet, last year, after the Senate voted to save the net, Paul Ryan ran out the clock on net neutrality in the House. This time, it's our House. Today, Democrats in both the Senate and House are announcing the Save the Internet Act, and we're going to send it to Donald Trump's desk. And that's exactly what I want to hear. Now, you also have Nancy Pelosi surprisingly taking the right side on this issue, tweeting out, House and Senate Democrats are coming together to send a clear message. We need to save the net. So I am going to say something that I don't usually say on this podcast. Good job, Democrats. You're doing exactly what we want you to do. And almost every single senator is tweeting about this. You have Doug Jones sharing polling numbers about just how popular net neutrality is. And they're all basically unified, like we often see how the right wing is unified. They have this one cohesive message, and this time Democrats are doing it. So this is a breath of fresh air. You rarely see this from Democrats, but when you do see it, it's like a unicorn. You don't want to look away because it is absolutely wonderful. So there's good news and bad news with regard to this particular bill. The good news, as I already alluded to, is that it has a pretty good chance at passing the House and the Senate. Definitely in the House. Maybe, it's still an open question in the Senate, although we did get a couple of Republicans vote for it back last year when they were trying to undo the repeal of net neutrality using the CRA, and that is the Congressional Review Act. But in the event, this is the bad news, this passes and it arrives on Donald Trump's desk, will he sign it into law? And we can only speculate, but my guess, if I had to predict, would be probably not. Now, the good news and the caveat to the bad news really is that Donald Trump hasn't really staked out a position on net neutrality. For the most part, he's been silent here. And for all we know, he's still pissed off at Ajit Pai for tanking the Sinclair merger. So he could just sign this bill into law as kind of a middle finger to Ajit Pai. He could do what he did before and condemn net neutrality. But since the words net neutrality aren't being used in the title of the bill, Maybe it'll go over his head and I'll sign it anyway. I'm not sure, but I will be watching very closely. Either way, Donald Trump has remained silent on this issue, and it's about time he puts his name on it. And put his name on it either literally by codifying this into law or choosing to not take a stand and allowing this to not get signed, which means that he is unequivocally against net neutrality. Now, before, he said he was against net neutrality, but he clearly didn't know what net neutrality was when he was talking about this, because he said something about the fairness doctrine and Obama's new net neutrality rules as a takeover. He doesn't really know what he's talking about. But with that being said, if he signed this into law, I would be surprised, and this would be a win for the internet, because you have a Republican president signing it into law. I'm not going to hold my breath that he does that, but if this does pass in the House and the Senate, then that sends a huge message to the American people. It shows that the Democrats are fighting for you, at least on this one issue. So Republicans, if they know what's good for them, they need to get on board with this. And any Democrat who's a holdout, I don't suspect that there will be many, they need to realize that Evan Greer is not exaggerating here when he states that the internet will come down on that individual lawmaker like a political hammer if they don't co-sponsor this legislation. So we're looking at individuals who didn't back the CRA resolution to restore net neutrality last time. If you don't back this, if you don't co-sponsor this, we're coming for you. We're going to try to primary you if the pressure we inevitably put on you won't work. So it's rare that we see good news, and it's even more rare that we see Democrats doing the right thing. But right here, I've got to give them credit where it's due. This is exactly what we want them to do. This is exactly what they should be doing. Coming out swinging on issues that are overwhelmingly popular and that would help the American people.
You could support the Humanist Report at patreon.com/Humanist Report. But trust me, I'd have way more supporters on Patreon if that was my podcast. Sad.